Have you been trying to figure out how you can close more deals with less leads? Check out this conversation I had with Nicholas Nick as we discuss how to use rapport building to get more deals when talking to sellers that are off market. Right here.
What I've learned, being a lead generator, I find myself constantly talking to investors, trying to mindset them into actually calling all the leads, right? And I know that sounds stupid, but who needs to be mindseted to call leads, right? I know that people could think that that's not a thing. It is a thing, okay? And what I've learned is there's a big difference between closing deals and working leads. Okay. And a lot of people, they might close a couple deals and then hire me, but then they'll get good leads. And they're like, Nick, what do I do here? And I'm like, oh, I see what you're missing. You're missing the working the lead part, right? We all know how to close a hot deal when it lands on our lap, find someone that wants to buy it. Right. But what do we do with a diamond in the rough, right? What process do we put that diamond through, or that piece of coal through, to make it become a diamond? And I think that is the majority of lead gen. So a really important skill is working leads, right? That's a skill that's different than closing deals. And I think people often think it's the same thing, and it's not. So the rapport versus negotiations, in my opinion, is step one. And I have been teaching a lot of my clients to lead with rapport. I think negotiation sounds scary. I think negotiation sounds ugly. I think that even if you're in a negotiation and you're the one who has to take less, no matter what, you feel a certain way about that. Okay. Right. And now that's not always a bad thing. I know we got to close deals. Negotiations has its place. No arguments at all there. What I resonate more with is building a relationship. Okay. And so a big piece of what I want to chat about today is focusing on that relationship, because if you get them to love you, or try to get them to love you, right? They're not going to love you. But if that's your goal, and they end up on liking you a lot, then that's still really awesome, right? But there's no better way to pay less for a house than to get the owner to like you. And right. And I have a little.
Trust you. It's the same thing, right?
Exactly. And then even if you have to negotiate, once they like and trust you, guess what? They're going to even appreciate that a lot more. They're going to be more receptive to those negotiations if you have that foundational relationship.
So Nick, can you tell me how you would start building rapport if you were to do a conversation like that?
For me, I think it's keeping it light. I think it's softball questions. I would come up with 3 to 5 questions you want to know the answer to, but isn't too invasive, right? So let's just say one great one is, how long has this been in the family for? Is a real great one, right? It's, they might start talking about grandma or grandpa or mom, or, he left it to us. And it's like when you get them going on good stories, I think is another good indicator, right? And another tip would be look for positive distractions, right? Where can we take this call that it's not all business all the time with them? And where can we look for opportunities to interject stories about our past and our lives? And I think one thing I'm really good at is just like relating to people. And I also don't make people feel rushed. So I think that not creating a space where they have all the time in the world, I think is also really important. It's like if someone thinks you always got to go, or, that they're on a time crunch, they're not going to be their authentic selves with you, because they're going to try to be respecting your time. So keeping it friendly, keep it light. Okay. I don't think we talk about money on the first one, maybe even 2 calls. That's how light we keep it, right? We want to show up as a resource. We want to show up as a friend. Okay. We're someone who's been in real estate for a long time, and we want to make sure they make the best decision possible for their property, right? It's kind of like the attitude that I like to carry. So that way it may not all be focused on price and how. It's more like, what are your goals? So one great question I have, and this is super ninja for realtor investor combos, is when you get the lead, let's say you get a lead from us. Hey, I see you spoke to Sherry about 123 Sycamore Street. Yeah, I sure did. Oh, great. Well, look, Sherry told me you may be interested in selling. Why don't you tell me, how did you plan on doing that? Okay. I think that is a really ninja question. And what's important about that question is they should throw up all over you. Oh, well, Sally up the street sold a house and she made a killing, and then Margaret did the same thing. And oh, okay, so now you know where their head's at. Now you know they want to sell because 4 properties on the street sold for max dollar value, right? So it's important for us to know where their head's at. And I think often as investors, we just come at them not caring where their head's at, and then we can have a mismatch. But if you know what they're thinking, that means you know how to get them to where you want them to be.
Love it, bro. Exact what you're saying, that ninja move. So that's something I do in my sales process when I'm talking to seller. Let me actually show you what it looks like. I have what's called an offer, my last name's Payne, so painless offer calculator, because what it does is it goes through all the options that a seller has to sell their house. So you can flip it, I can wholesale, I can do an ovation, I can do a burr, I can do a rental, I can do creative cash offers. So when I'm talking to a seller, I don't go in there with anything specific in my head where I'm like, I want them to accept this.
Yes.
When I talk to a seller, I just ask them, what options have you explored? Right. So I kind of like how you said, how do you like to, how would you like to sell your house?
Plan on doing it? Yeah. Right.
Same things for me. It's like, hey, we buy a lot of properties, but we don't always, buy them the same way. I'm just curious, before we dive into kind of like what we do, I was just curious, like, what options have you explored so far to sell this house? So it's not like invasive. I'm not like being aggressive. I just kind of want to know where their journey is. And then, I ask them, if they don't really have anything to say, I just say, well, have any investors made you any cash offers yet? And they're like, no, they haven't. I'm saying, well, have you even thought about keeping it yourself and renovating it and selling it, after you flip it yourself? You're going to make the most money that way. And they're like, oh, I really don't. And then I'm like, well, have you thought about listing it or selling it to someone? Like, are you able to sell it on terms? Like, maybe you keep it as a rental or maybe you sell it to someone and you carry the loan. I go through all these options in what I call my offer option decision tree. And depending on like where they're at, like if they need speed and they don't have time, over here it says they want the highest price and have time. I know what options to offer depending on their motivation. So the whole purpose of like the rapport building for me is like, where are they? Like, I'm not trying to push them into one box. It's more of like, where are you? Okay, your house is currently listed, but you're kind of upset because the agent hasn't been able to sell it. Okay, well, the options that I have are, I can buy this for cash, or we can, make you some creative terms. But again, we're not diving into like, oh, this is my offer. And that's how I build rapport, bro, is I just kind of talk to them about what they want to do.
And let me just call to everyone how genius this is, because the hidden subtext here is the more you have to offer the seller, the more rapport is important to you. If you just have a cash offer, what do you care about rapport? Look, man, all I got is 100K. So, take it or leave it, right? Because if that's the only trick up your sleeve, then what does rapport even matter? But your system, that was beautiful, by the way. Like what you just shared. I hope you get some people booking this masterclass at the bottom, because that was ninja, bro. What you just shared in a couple. I actually took a little screenshot just so I could
I'll send you this if you want, man. No problem. Like this is for my mentor.
This is beautiful.
Dude, I love it because so what happens is I put in the numbers, and when it does come to negotiation time, once we run the numbers, I sit down and I say, hey, look, we got a couple options for you. We already talked about how you only really, you don't want to renovate it. So you only want to list it or do cash, and actually give them their bottom dollar. I say like, hey, if we go cash, you're going to get 426. But if you let me, list this for you, you're going to get more. Like these numbers aren't exact.
Wow. And see, this is the difference. I want everyone to know that this is the difference between having a business and being a wholesaler. Okay. Yeah. I feel like this is a business. There's nothing wrong with being a wholesaler's phase one, right? But I think everyone should really strive to have this. This is so awesome. And this speaks to me as a business owner. I have a hard time relating to, even though I sell to investors, because like they don't care about customer service and like they just care about transactions, But what you just showed me, I can clearly see your whole business model. And then think of the seller. Oh my goodness, you're not a wholesaler, Nathan. You're a house selling specialist by the time you're done showing them all those options. That's really cool.
Yeah, dude, I love it because like, especially with the analytical people, like the older generation that like, they want to know their options. Like sometimes when I show this to older people, they're like, look, thanks for showing this to me because I was thinking about doing this and that option. But now that I know the difference between your cash offer and mine is just and listing is like 40,000. It's not worth 40K for me to go through that hassle at the moment. Right. So
Yeah,
it's just a way more transparent process. And anyway,
wow.
building
That's
rapport is something I'm huge on, man. Because if I'm talking to someone, I actually do care. I really do care about their situation. And if selling it for cash is not their best option, which it's not a lot of the time, I tell them that. I'm like, you know what? We can get this done quick,
Yeah,
but
right.
it seems like in your situation, from what you've told me, you should just list this thing and I can help you with that. Right.
Yeah. And that has to help you sleep at night. You know, it's like, I think about this. And it could be, my business is cool. I get to make other people rich, right, with lead mining. So it is rewarding.
When I first started wholesale, I think this is something that everyone faces. You don't want to like tell people that you wholesale because they like the common thing is like, oh, you take people's houses. And then I explain to people like, I don't think I've never taken anyone's house. First of all, because you can't take someone's house. And the way I do business and the way I tell people to do business is like, if you present options, if you know how a seller is able to sell and you point them to what best fits their needs, you're going to sleep great at night. So it's definitely a great feeling to do this business because I've helped a ton of people out of situations where they were going to lose their properties quickly. So this is a really interesting situation. This was a property in Colorado and it was a millionaire, multi-millionaire, had tons of properties. This was $1 million house. And you would be like, how can you serve someone that has millions of dollars? Like they're not distressed. But this guy, he had a tenant in his $1 million property that he was scared of. He was like a bodybuilder. He had like piercings in his cheeks. He was jacked and tattooed and he was scared of the guy. So he's like, hey man, I don't want to deal with this guy. Let him in. Now he's gotten kind of crazy. I'll sell this to you at a discount and you deal with it. So I was like, okay. And there's someone in my one of the buyers in my network that was like, yeah, bro, I don't mind taking care of it. He bought it. I wholesaled to him for $50K. The guy just goes and knocks on the door and is like, hey man, I bought the house. I'm going to need you to leave. You haven't been paying the rent. And the bodybuilder's like, yeah, that's fine. I just, you know, the guy that I was talking to, the previous landlord, he was really hard to deal with. I don't know why he didn't like me. So it was interesting to show like, hey, you can serve anyone. Like we helped out that landlord. That headache of that tenant and that issues they were having like was not worth it to him to have to deal with it anymore. So it can help people in many different situations.
Yeah. And so many people would be scared because it has a problematic tenant. And it's like, no, that's actually an opportunity for you to think about how much pressure, and if you haven't had bad tenants, you don't know how much pressure that landlord's under. Okay. I've had some nightmare tenants and sometimes it's worth a massive discount to never have to lose sleep over that guy again too.
Right. If you like that content, like and subscribe for more information and so we can send you more videos like this.